Hi, and welcome to another college information series. For those at home who are watching us on YouTube, thanks for joining us. We've got a lively group here that have been answering questions, and so let's get started. This particular presentation is focusing on California public colleges, specifically the University of California, and we're also going to touch upon the California State University system. With the University of California, we're going to be talking about the 13 factors that they look at for admission, and with the CSUs, we're going to be talking about index scores. So let's go ahead and get started. So already we can see from our little Q&A word cloud from before we started the recording, SAT, ACT, California public colleges, not private, California public colleges, which is the University of California system, and the California State University system. So if it says CSU or something state or University of California, something like Irvine or Los Angeles, there are no tests used in admissions. So it doesn't matter if you got a perfect score, they're not even going to look at it. That you can't even give it to them. So the SAT or the ACT is not used, and that is by lawsuit. So it's unless something major happens, it's not coming back anytime soon. So right now we don't need the SAT or ACT for admission to the University of California or the Cal State system. Another thing that often comes up that people seem to feel happens is they think that the campuses, UCI, UCLA, San Diego, Berkeley, they think they're talking to each other. And often I get a question, well, if I get into this one, will I not get into that one? Like, are they only going to let me into one? And the answer is no. I've seen students get into all of them. And I've seen students get into a few of them, and they do not coordinate at all. So those two things are really important to know straight off the bat. Okay, so the University of California is holistic. And if you remember last week, we did a case study where we kind of looked at students in a holistic manner. And if you are watching at home or you didn't get a chance to see that, the case study is or will be on YouTube. But the UCs are another set of colleges that specifically use holistic admissions, and they divide it into parts. They divide it into academics and non-academic. And we're going to look at those each separately. And so let's do it. It's academic and non-academic factors in the University of California. So the University of California on their website, like they're one of the only colleges, not the only set of colleges in the United States that actually tells you what they look at. Everybody comes to me and they say, what do colleges want to see? Well, the University of California actually has a list on their website. And here it is. I'm going to talk to you about it. So first, we're going to start with the academic factors. Specific things that are very important. First of all, remember, we're always harping on those A through G courses. Well, that's a University of California thing. The first thing they look at is your academic GPA, your grade point average, in all your completed A through G classes. And completed means up through summer of 11th grade. So they're not going to be looking at your 12th grade classes because those grades won't have come in yet by the time you turn in your application. So they're looking actually specifically at the summer before 10th through the summer after 11th. So 10th and 11th grade, including summer schools. And they're looking at that GPA. So that's one of the factors. It's kind of interesting because they also, cap things and weight things, and it gets a little complicated, and we're going to actually play with that a little bit later. But the A through G courses are very important. That means they don't look at things like PE, and they don't look at things like health or community service or other things, service learning, things that you might put on an application, on your things that you do that enrich your application or enrich your life, but not necessarily they're not part of the A through G course list. So just something to know. Now, another thing that's really important, people always say, which is more important? Do I take an advanced class like an AP or a community college class, or do I take a less academic class? Like, what do I do with all that? So now we're getting into the answers to those questions. Like, do I take the harder class and maybe get a lower grade? Do I take this is the answer. So first of all, beyond the initial 15 required courses, do you go beyond? So that's the first thing they're going to look at. Beyond those initial courses, that initial GPA, are you doing more than you have to? Or do you get to your senior year and you say, I'm done. You know what? I've done everything I need to. I'm ready to graduate, and I'm just going to sit back. Well, they want to know what you've done beyond your required courses. And they want to know what you've done beyond the general. So honors, advanced placement, transferable college courses, they actually look at those and count them. So when we put this all together, we can see, yeah, you got to do your required courses. You got to do your 3 math courses, and you got to do your 4 years of English, and you have to do, I don't know, 2 years of history, et cetera, et cetera. But you need to go beyond that. That's the minimum. So the number of courses beyond and the advanced levels. So the answer to the question is of do I take the more advanced class and risk, or do I take the easier class? They care. They care that you're challenging yourself. And your GPA doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be good. It doesn't need to be perfect. Okay, let's carry on. This is an interesting one. Identification by the University of California as being ranked in the top 9% of our school's learners, not the school down the street. So people always worry that they're being compared to everyone in California. And in some ways, yeah, they're looking at the whole state and the nation, but they're also looking at the student within the context of their school being iLEAD Exploration. The top 9% is something that the University of California calculates based on information that we give them. So if you rank in the top 9% by the UC's calculation, not necessarily by our calculation, which would include PE and other things, but by the University of California calculation, that gives you a little bump. That's called ELC, or eligibility in the local context. If you rank in the top 9% of iLEAD, according to the University of California's calculation, you're also guaranteed admission to a UC campus, one that has room, which is almost always Merced, sometimes Riverside. I've actually seen our students invited to Riverside if they didn't get into their campus of choice. And so that is something that helps, gives you a little bump, and that is something you find out after you've turned in your application. You can go back into the application itself, and it'll tell you if you are in the top 9%. Now, once again, remember I mentioned that senior year, don't slack off your senior year, because that's one of the factors. The quality, they don't know your grades, but they know what you're taking. The quality of your senior year as measured by the type and number of academic courses that are either in progress when you turn in your application or planned for the next semester. You can't slack off. And I see this all the time. I see people say, but I did everything I need to do, and I want to go to UCLA. I got news. You gotta continue on through your senior year. Remember that initial, like, beyond the minimum advanced classes. So senior year matters. This is an interesting one. Quality of your academic performance relative to the educational opportunities available in your school. Now, the University of California has a course list. They know what courses we offer. They know that we have the ability to have advanced courses. And so they know that you have educational opportunities with us. So what they're really looking at is, did you take advantage of them? And there's actually a question, one of the personal insight questions, one of the mini essays that they have, where they ask you about your educational opportunities or barriers. And sometimes we get students from other schools that have been really blocked from being able to take the classes that they wanted to, and you have a chance to talk about that. So, if you've run into barriers, they do want to know, and they do take that into consideration, but they know that we have pretty rich options here. Now, these are the ones that I love. Outstanding performance in one or more specific subject areas. So if you have an area you really love and you want to just dive into it, that matters to the University of California. You could be taking extra community college classes, you can be doing projects, all kinds of things that have to do with a subject area of interest. And I like this one a lot, improvement in academic performance, both in grades and in quality. I had a student that came from another school, was not allowed to take any advanced classes. When she came here, she immediately dug in and took advantage of the fact that we allow her to take community college courses. And so the UCs can see that increase in rigor in hers, and she is currently at UCLA. They did notice that. And so, you could, if you had a bad year and you can show that you can do well, that improvement is one of the factors that they look at. Okay, so looking at the GPA is a little different. It's a little different than what we have on your transcripts, a little different than what other colleges look at. Remember, every college, they do their own calculation, and this is the UC calculation. 10th and 11th grade include the summer before 10th and the summer after 11th. So if you want grades to be seen, they've got to be in that area. They don't see 12th grade, and they don't calculate 9th grade. Now, they still can see 9th grade. So I want to make that really clear. They can still see what you're doing, and those classes count for A through G, but the actual GPA is not, they don't include 9th grade. And this is true also for CSU system. Now, the grades are weighted. So you get an extra point for an honors, an AP, or a community college class. So they add an extra point. Typically, when you're looking at a GPA, an A is a 4, and a B is a 3, and a C is a 2 when you average that out. But in this case, if it's an AP, honors, or community college course, an A is a 5, and a B is a 4. So you get that bump, but they cap it. And what they do is if you take honors classes in 10th grade, you're only allowed to have 2 of those points calculated in. And altogether, you're only allowed to have 8 semesters of bonus points added in. So there is a cap. You might have a 4.839 because you've taken all these classes, but they're going to cap it with 8 classes. And that's to keep it fair between schools. And also because they don't necessarily want you to overdo it. And you have to have a minimum GPA of 3.0. And that's kind of low for a UC. So while they have a minimum GPA of 3.0, that really is, for the majority of the campuses, probably a pretty low GPA. So this is the GPA aspect of it. Now, last week, or last session, I guess about 2 weeks ago, we looked at 4 students. We looked at, we called them red, blue, green, and yellow. And what I want to do is I want to take the exact same transcripts that we looked at when we did our case study last week, but this time we're going to look at them through the lens of the UCs. So this is the same student, mechanical engineering. She had a 3.7 and a weighted 3.8, but now we're looking at her UC GPA. And remember, they only look at 10th and 11th grade. In our case study, I believe that Red may have actually had some senior year grades by the time that our fake school looked at them. But here, everything that she turns into the University of California will have an in progress, IP, or a planned, PL. That's what they see. So they know what you're going to take, but they're only using the GPA, the classes that are in red, that 10th and 11th grade. So her UC GPA, by coincidence, happens to be the same as her weighted GPA. But we also know that she has taken a total of 40, and that's 40 credits. So each class has 2 semesters. And when you add them together, we've got 40 courses altogether of UC A through G courses. So that still counts 9th and 12th grade for the count, but not for the GPA. And the total advanced courses are going to be 8. So she capped out at 8, which is why her weighted GPA and her UC GPA were the same. Okay, here we go. Remember Blue? He was our superstar, but we didn't admit him because he was very kind of boring. You can see that he has a different weighted and UC GPA. He maxed out all those classes. He took so many classes, but the UCs are only looking at 10th and 11th, and they are capping. So they cap at that 8 credits of honors credits. And so he has a weighted GPA of 4.48, and his UC GPA is 4.33. Now, most colleges really consider that 4.33, but I have it on good word from people kind of on the inside that the more selective, the Berkeley, the UCLA will actually look at, they have both those GPAs in front of them. They know the UC GPA. They also know your full GPA. So just some facts that those are really competitive schools, and they do kind of look at both. Now, we looked at the total number of A through G courses. He's got 49, total advanced courses, 35. So this is looking at the AP level and the community college level. And you can see his GPA was based on the classes in red. One more student. This is an interesting one. Green. Green had a lot of community college courses. Green, when I wrote the case study originally, Green in my head was an iLEAD student who joined us halfway through in 11th grade. There were some situations with Green. And that's why suddenly Green switched to all community college classes, kind of like the student that I mentioned who had one opportunity and then came to us and took advantage of that. So you can see that we've got a kind of different situation. The GPA is 3.68, weighted is 4.0, but the UC GPA was a 3.62. And that is because this student had some grades from senior year that they knew when we did the original calculation in the case study last time. But this time we're not looking at any senior grades. We're not looking at 9th grade. And so this particular UC GPA looked at 10th grade, and 10th grade was the problem year for this student. And so it did knock their UC GPA down a little bit. So, but they can see your whole transcript. They can see the increase. Remember, that was one of our factors, was the ability to, looking at that increase in grades. So we see that we went from like a C to suddenly semester 2 of 11th grade, we have all A's. And that's what Green has. I will tell you something interesting though. This is a situation where the University of California, specifically UCLA, may ask for more information. Most students who apply to the University of California system will put in their classes and it will look just like this. And you'll see that semester 1 planned, semester 2, or excuse me, in progress, semester 2 planned. Once in a while, when you have a student with an extenuating circumstance, UCLA specifically will ask them to send in more information, including first semester grades. My student that is at UCLA right now, who didn't have opportunities until she came to us, was one of those students that was asked for more information because they wanted to see how she did. They wanted to see if there was an increase and how that increase in rigor was. And so we have at least 1 to 2 students every year that seems to get the request for more information. So just something to know specifically about UCLA. And also Berkeley sometimes asks for a letter of recommendation after the applications are closed. So once in a while you get kind of something weird. They want to know more. So let's carry on. So I didn't do yellow. We understand. We got red, blue, and green. Okay. So those were our academic factors. You can see academic factors, they're really important, but they're not the only thing. And now we're looking at non-academic factors, and these matter significantly. And I've been with iLEAD for about 6 years, and I've really had a chance to look deeply into the students that get accepted and the students that don't. And I can tell you for a fact that it's not just academics. It's truly holistic. They truly look at all aspects of the student. And so let's dive into this a little bit. So the 13 factors that are non-academic, or excuse me, the academic factors of the 13, the non-academic factors. So achievements in special projects in any academic field of study. Remember when a few slides ago, we looked at the student who kind of excels in a specific area? Well, that was academic, but it continues on with the non-academic. So achievements in special projects. And I've seen some really interesting things. We seem to have a lot of pilots and folks like that. And so when you have a student that's very excited about something, dives in, does projects, goes beyond not just academically, but extracurricularly, that's recognized. So special projects in any academic field of study outside of school, and academic or special projects inside of school. So it doesn't matter where you do them. And that's the thing that's also nice. You can do them. I think iLEAD has, I think it's called Dream Up into Space, where you can actually like send little things to the space shuttle and grow beans and stuff like that. That would be an example of an in-school project that they ask for people at the beginning of every year. If you're, interested in sending things up into space, we have that opportunity. That would be considered a special project in the context of high school. But you can also do things outside of high school, and both are recognized. This next one, location of your secondary school and residence, that's not really something you can deal with. You live where you live, but the UCs do want to make sure that everyone within the state of California has access. So they want to make sure that we are getting kids from Irvine, but also kids from Joshua Tree. And so there are some cases where they will make sure that they are reaching all corners of the state. So in that particular case, it could matter, but that's something that's not within your control. Okay. This is a one that I really like. Academic accomplishments in light of life experiences and special circumstances. And you can see a number of the things that they mention are possible: disability, family income, first in your family to attend college, a student who needs to work, someone who is in a disadvantaged social or academic environment, family situations, personal situations, a veteran, a refugee, all these things matter. And that's one of the questions that you can answer in the application is about barriers or difficulties in your life. And I have seen these taken into consideration. Now, remember, it's not that you're telling them a sad story and you're going to be admitted for that sad story. What they're looking at is your academics in light of your circumstances. So I've seen it a number of times, for example, with students who have had disabilities that have kept them from accessing what they need. They're able to talk about it. I've seen students talk about being the first in their family and how that made things more difficult. I've seen students who, we got a lot of students here who need to help put food on the table for their families. They don't have access to the extracurricular time, and that's recognized. So if you have a situation that has made your academic situation more difficult, and yet you are still succeeding, that matters a lot. Participation in educational prep programs. A very popular one is Cosmos. Cosmos is a science and engineering program that takes place in the summer, has a whole application process. There's also performing arts, a statewide performing arts, and there's all kinds of preparation programs. Upward Bound, other types of prep programs. Those matter too. And so there's actually a place where they give you a whole list of prep programs and they ask you if you participated in any. So there's a lot of things that you can do during the summer that they consider a really strong. And these are programs that prepare you for rigorous academics. Okay, I love this one. This is my favorite. Special talents, achievements, and awards. I call this the hodgepodge. Like it's everything. So visual performing arts, communications, athletics. I mean, like it's the everything. Written or oral proficiency in other languages. I had one student who had really strong in her languages. She was self-studying languages. She was taking classes at the community colleges in multiple Asian languages. She was studying Asian culture. That was her thing. And she didn't have the level of academics in other areas that you would expect someone who got into every single UC, including Berkeley, UCLA, and San Diego, to have had. But she had this extraordinary area of oral, written proficiency plus cultural knowledge, and that mattered. Unusual promise for leadership, community service, or participation in student government. And we have student government here. I know that we have students at PCLC that are doing their student government. I skipped one: special interest, intensive study, and exploration of other cultures. We have students that go abroad. We have students that talk about, their family spending time in X, Y, or Z places and what they've learned from it, not just that they went, but in what way it brought them value. And then just other experiences, achievements that demonstrate your promise for contributing to the campus. So you think about it that way. One of the ways that a college knows who you'll be when you get there is who you were before you got there. What did you do in high school? And will you bring that with you? If you were very involved in student government, in debate, in visual arts, in foreign language, you're probably going to continue that interest. And so them understanding who you are and what you did is going to give them a pretty good idea of what you'll do. And look how broad this is. It's everything. There's nothing specific. Okay. So there are 13 factors that are written on the webpage. But when I was putting together the presentation, I had the web page in front of me, and I had something that was given to the counselors in front of me, and they weren't the same. They were two different lists. And so I put all the factors on here. And let me show you something. I don't know if you can read this very well. Let me move these little pictures over. So this is the student-facing website. You can always go to that website and see these 13 factors. And you can see right here the GPA. I think that's the first 5 are your academics, and then you have kind of educational opportunities, and then we dive more into the non-academic factors. And these are your 13 factors. But when the counselors go, and they go to the presentations at the counselor conference, they gave us something different. This right here, the achievements and special projects, they divide up school, in school, out of school. And instead, on our document, the document they gave us and the presentation that they gave us as counselors, they added this participation in educational preparation programs. There's 14. I don't understand the UCs, but I thought I'd give you that little tidbit. These matter too. They just don't have them on the webpage. Carrying on. Okay. Let me move these pictures out of the way again. Okay, so personal characteristics. I want to add this in because we have a student who is currently at Berkeley, and he was given the opportunity to take a look at his transcript, or not his transcript, his application and the rubric. So they apparently they used a rubric. They looked at his essays and extracurriculars. And he specifically wanted to look at that. His academics were excellent. He tons of community college, lots of honors. So we already knew that. But he was curious about how they looked at his qualitative aspects. And he wrote it all down, and then he called me. And so this is what they said about him when they looked at his application. They found that he had a love of learning. And this was through both his academics and his personal insight questions, the little essays that they give you. This one just made sense for this student. Demonstrated concern for others was something that Berkeley specifically looked for. They saw that this was a student that cared about others through the descriptions that he gave in his, as examples in his personal insight questions in the small essays. And it was very obvious to me when I read them. He wrote them all and then he gave them to me, and I'm like, wow, like I can see who you are. And he was someone who just was caring. And they picked that out. They found him original and creative. Absolutely. I knew this student that came out in his extracurriculars and essay questions. And he also had sustained extracurricular involvement, which was very interesting for him because he went to numerous schools and yet kept a hold of what he loved to do, which in his case was music. So he stayed, he wasn't necessarily doing the exact same program indefinitely because this particular student was in numerous places. Instead, he kept doing the thing that he loved. And you could see that through his application. It was a year here, it was 2 years here as he moved. And they noticed that he just kept trying to do the things he loved. And I thought that was really kind of, I really love this demonstrated concern for others. I really think this was definitely this particular student, and they just picked it out. Now, we've covered the UCs. UCs you could see are very, very holistic. That extracurricular, that, you know, all the things that half of that list of the 13, 14, I don't know how many factors now, 14, we're going to call them 14. The 14 factors, a huge portion of that was qualitative, not quantitative. On the other hand, we have another set of colleges in California, and that is our state CSU, California State University System. So I want to kind of switch gears. I probably should have put a slide in there to not make it sudden to say we're changing gears. But I want to talk a little bit about the CSU system. And when I say CSU, Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Long Beach, Cal Poly Pomona, Cal Poly Pomona SLO, or sorry, Cal Poly SLO, Cal Poly Pomona. We have 23 campuses, and they aren't holistic. So this is kind of giving you an idea of the difference between holistic and non-holistic. So with the UCs, you have that whole kind of section of qualitative stuff that's not used. And instead, we have what's called a multi-factor admission, but these are all quantitative. So the first thing they do is they take that GPA and they create what's called an index score, a numerical score. And wherever you are in that numerical score, compared to all the other people who have applied, if you are in the top X number, you're in. And if you're not, you're not. Nothing personal. It's just a score. They do it by score, and it's done by computer. They do double check everything by hand. I was told by a admission officer at Cal Poly Pomona, but it is a numerical application process. So the calculation of the index score is different at every campus. So there isn't one way of doing it. And we're going to actually look into that a little bit more in just a second. They can include academic GPA. They may have a different calculation if you're going into a STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. They may weigh certain classes more, math and science. And every college, every campus does it different. They also ask the number of hours that you work per week. They ask the number of hours that you spend on extracurricular. So you could put like a 5 or a 3. Everything is numerical. They do check a couple of things if you're a first generation, meaning the first in your family, to complete college. If your parents have done some college, you're still considered a first generation student. Foster use and a few other things that might put up barriers. So these are all done with just a point system. And so what's really interesting is the GPAs can be slightly different. When you look at red and blue, you can see their GPAs are the same. And that is because they've taken AP and honors courses. So red and blue are in more of a traditional brick and mortar. They have AP courses and honors courses, and it's the exact same calculation for them. The UC and the CSU GPAs are the same, but look at green. Green has a slightly different calculation, which I think is kind of interesting. And that is because they count community college courses twice. They put them in the calculation twice. We count a community college course as a full year. You take a history course and you're getting a year of credit. And the UC counts one semester, but the CSU counts it as a year. So you can see that the GPA is slightly different. And it is being compared to other peers, and they also are counting the number of courses, things like that. But it's kind of interesting that green got a bump with his GPA. So there you are, you're with iLEAD. The nice little extra thing for you. And our kids, our learners, they knock the CSUs out of the park. They really, really do. Every year, they just amazing results. So let's take a look at an index score. So most of the some of the colleges are transparent, some of them aren't. And Cal Poly Pomona is the most transparent college of the whole system. And what's really great is they actually tell you the GPA, how to calculate the index score, to take the GPA, calculate the index score. And then they tell you the index scores that got admitted the prior year. So let's take a look. If you look and you calculate, I don't know, anyone got a calculator? Anyone want to try it? They take that A through G GPA. Remember, that's the 10th, 11th grade, summer before, summer after. They multiply it by 1,000 and they add 450. So I'm not going to pull out my calculator. If someone wants to pull, if you're in my class, I make you do this, but I'm not going to make you do it in our webinar. But basically, you're going to take that GPA. If we look at red, her UC GPA is 3.89. We're going to multiply it by 1,000. We're going to move that decimal point over. We're going to add 450 points. And if you want to calculate it, go ahead. But I'm going to make it easier for you. I did the calculation. So you can see that these are the index scores for Cal Poly Pomona. Every college has its own calculation. Red had a 4340, blue had a 4780, and green had a 4150. Now, what does that mean? Let's take a look. See if the link's going to work for me. Dun, da, da. Okay, so if you go to Cal Poly Pomona, they're one of the few schools that does this. Multi-factor admission. You can take a look. This is what they look at. There is your GPA, how to work and get that index score. And a couple of things, they may add some math coursework. They may change that index score a bit with math coursework. They are looking at local area, if you live around Cal Poly, if you're a first generation, youth services, different things like that. So for the most part, though, it's the index score. So how does that work? Let's take a look. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at Red had a 4340, and I think that she was interested in mechanical engineering. So we can actually go down to the College of Engineering. We can open it up and we can see if she would have made it the year before. She's a 4340 and she's mechanical engineering. Would she have made it into Cal Poly Pomona the prior year? These are last year's numbers. She most likely wouldn't have. 4539 was the lowest index score for students who were accepted into mechanical engineering. Now, a 2950, just to tell you with Cal Poly Pomona's calculation, is a 2.5 GPA. So you can see that this is engineering. So we've got some pretty high numbers that we need, but there are a few of them that are a little bit easier to get into. So electronic systems, industrial manufacturing. But if you want like aerospace, I think aerospace is the most competitive engineering at Cal Poly Pomona. This is what's called being impacted. So impacted means there's more applicants than there are seats. And so when you see, a number that's this high, it means that there's just not enough place. Let's look at non-engineering, because engineering is tough. So if we go to your traditional ones, you can see that they had a much higher acceptance and much easier to get in to these particular majors. And local, the area around Cal Poly Pomona, non-local, all California and beyond. So you can see that if you were local or non-local, it's the same score. And I haven't been able to find any that are different right now. But you can see you didn't need to have a ridiculous GPA for the majority of these. Music needed an audition, except for psychology. And this is really common. Psychology is very commonly impacted. There's always more applicants than seats. So you did need a much higher GPA than the other majors for this particular one, not as high as mechanical engineering. And so you can see College of Science, we have some index scores here. Computer science, much higher. So it is much harder to get into Cal Poly Pomona computer science. So this is where people say, well, what if I just apply to sociology and then transfer into psychology? Can I do that? You are allowed to move around, but you aren't guaranteed that you're going to get in to a specific degree. So if you say, you know what, I'm going to do sociology and try to move over to computer science, you still got to apply to computer science from within. So that isn't necessarily a way in. So just be aware, some majors are more difficult than others because they're impacted. There's just too many students. Okay, so going back over here. Just to give you a comparison, we saw Cal Poly Pomona. What we have here is we have Long Beach, CSU Long Beach, which I haven't even been able to figure out what all this means to calculate it. You have your college prep GPA, which I'm assuming is your A through G, multiplied by 200. And then you add your math and your English. What is it just 10th and 11th? Is it all 3 years? Is it, I'm not 100% sure. I really wish they would tell us, but they don't. I could call them, I guess, but you could see it's a little bit more complex. Every school has their very own. You can see that their STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, have a totally different, you're looking at your math and your science multiplied by 600 added on to your college prep. I mean, like just, but you can see that they're taking, it's numerical. So they're not looking at any other aspect with a few exceptions of barriers. So foster youth and veteran and first gen, little extra point, but not that much help, a little bit. But you can see that they're really just giving you a score. Long Beach doesn't give you that breakdown like Cal Poly Pomona does. So we don't really know what the numbers are and who, what the psychology index score was versus the sociology index score. So, but you can see that they're dropping it into a formula. And they used to do the SAT, ACT, and the formula used to just be very basic, like GPA, SAT, put it together, put it in a blender, here's your score. But they got a little fancier when they stopped using the SAT and ACT and really started diving in a little bit more in ways to really look at the GPA and what you've done and how you've done. Okay. That is the presentation for the public colleges. That was a whirlwind presentation, and we're going to do the Q&A after this. So the folks that are watching on YouTube, sorry, you can't join us for the Q&A. But so as I continue wrapping it up here, if you have any questions, start putting them in the chat. I want to let everyone know that we are offering the SAT on March 14th in Costa Mesa at our learning studio in Costa Mesa. Jenna's going to put the link in the chat. Registration is until next week. So there's only a little bit of time. You got next week to register. After that, we're closing registration if you want to join us. Most likely I'm giving the test. So you'll get to hang out with me if you're a learner. If you're a parent, we're going to make you hang out outside. And then there's some college fairs coming up. There's going to be a virtual college fair and an Orange County college fair hosted by the National Association of College Admission Counselors. So these are legit, very good fairs. If you want to go and talk to colleges, you don't want to leave your house, you want to stay in your jammies, you can do it online. But if you actually want to go and talk to people and get some swag and stickers and pens and stuffed animals, you can actually go to the Orange County Fair. I put the link there, and I believe that Jenna has put it into the chat box as well, so that you can go in and sign up and get more information. We got more coming. We're continuing on with holistic admissions. As I'm sure you know, I send out the reminders a couple days before and then a half an hour before. We're going to be doing rigor, honors, AP, concurrent enrollment. We're going to go more in depth with that, but not just for the UC-CSU. We're going to be talking about it in general for college admissions. We're going to be spending a session on extracurriculars, talking about community service, or what I like to call service to your community, summer programs. We're going to be diving into testing, college fit, how to build a list, and we're going to be closing it out with transfer programs. If I get a lot of requests, I can also add in a accessibility, how to deal with disabilities in college presentation that I do with the special ed department. And so if that's of interest, email me, let me know. If I get enough interest, I have it already prepared, and I'm happy to do that one as well. So we got more sessions coming up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sign us off, and I'm going to say bye to those at home, bye those at home, and then we'll start our Q&A. So bye those at home.